This video is now in session, and Ron DeSantis is seeming to be like a real 2024 presidential candidate, and he could potentially become the presidential candidate in 2024. But let's just say that Donald Trump instead chose to run for 2024 to become president once again. And as in that case, Ron DeSantis most likely would back off until 2028. So that puts Ron DeSantis in a position to go against Kamala Harris, which is very interesting to look at politically speaking, which is why in this video we're going to examine what a race might look like between Ron DeSantis and Kamala Harris. Now, obviously, it's very far out from 2028, way too far out, but to even have a glimpse of what it would be like. But this is in terms of what's happening right now. In terms of approval ratings by both Ron DeSantis and Kamala Harris, there are different levels. For Kamala Harris, there's an favorability rating of 46%. Meanwhile, there's an unfavorability rating of 45%. So it's a very close margin between the two groups, with 10% not knowing enough about Kamala Harris. So she is very partisan. She divides a lot of America through this polling. It's literally 46 to 45. Meanwhile, for Ron DeSantis, he gets a job approval rating as governor, not as vice president, of 53% or 55% in some polls, and up to 60% by Republican pollsters. So it's pretty much a simple majority that he does have in terms of an approval rating. So we will keep those numbers in mind as we start to fill out this map. Now, in terms of likely states, I'd say that Montana, Iowa, Ohio, Alaska, South Carolina, all of these states will go for Ron DeSantis by a likely margin. And that's primarily a carryover from Trump, with the exception of Montana. Montana, I'd say, goes from safe to likely, primarily because in the 2020 election, it wasn't that close from being it was kind of close from being a likely state, and Trump was able to captivate a lot of voters from Montana. Usually, it's around a little bit higher than 13 point. I'd say it would be a little higher than 13.7%, but that's more of the normal numbers. So that's what we expect from the likely states for Republicans. Meanwhile, for the Democratic states, we have New Mexico, Colorado, Virginia. Maine's first district is safe. Maine's at large. Actually, no. Maine's first district is likely, and those are all the states for Kamala Harris. And the reason why Maine's first district goes to likely is mainly a carryover from the 2016 election, where Maine's first district went to Clinton by 14.8 percentage points. That's around the same margins as I'd say for Kamala Harris. And you'll see that reflected throughout the rest of the map, where Kamala Harris doesn't do quite as well as Joe Biden in the Rust Belt, and she does a little bit marginally better in the Sun Belt compared to Joe Biden. But we'll just keep going with these margins. For the likely, by the way, the rest of the states, these are all carryovers from the Biden states in 2020. For the lean states, Ron DeSantis, Texas, Florida, why does it keep going to Texas, Florida, Wisconsin, and then Maine 2nd District, and Nebraska 2nd District. And those are the states, as well as New Hampshire. Not New Hampshire, that I meant for Kamala Harris. But pretty much for the lean states, for Ron DeSantis, for Wisconsin, he's most likely going to make inroads with Rust Belt voters. Even though Ron DeSantis is not Trump, Kamala Harris is not Joe Biden either. So Ron DeSantis, he is a white guy, so he's bound to get some votes in the Rust Belt. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is a black Indian woman, which we've seen in the Rust Belt doesn't really do as well with voters. So it's likely that the Rust Belt is going to vote Republican almost as a whole. And you'll see that with the tilt states for Texas, Democrats are there are more and more Democrats in Texas. I wouldn't say 2028 would be the year that Texas would flip if it was between Ron DeSantis and Kamala Harris, but it does become lean instead of likely. For Florida, it stays lean. In fact, I'd be unsurprised if Florida went to Ron DeSantis by 5 percentage points, 4 percentage points, primarily because Florida is becoming more Republican by the day. And even in a Democratic wave year, it went for Republicans in the governor's election and in the Senate election, where there was an incumbent Democrat. So I expect this trend for Republicans to continue, unless as the Florida Democratic Party finally figures out a way to out finesse the Republican Party of Florida, which is doing pretty good. Now, for the tilt states, or not for the tilt states, for the lean states of Kamala Harris, you already know New Hampshire, Vermont is safe. Nevada is lean. Minnesota is also lean, and those are all the states for Kamala Harris. The reason why New Hampshire is lean is because, again, this is kind of like the Rust Belt situation where it's between Ron DeSantis and Kamala Harris. Obviously, a lot of people are going to choose Ron DeSantis more than Kamala Harris. Race does have a lot to do with voters' decisions in the Rust Belt, and that's how. And as a result, Ron DeSantis does have an advantage. And then in Nevada, keeping with the status quo, Minnesota, keeping with the status quo from 2016, where Hillary Clinton won it by 1.5 percentage points. And then finally, we have the tilt states, starting with Republicans. We have Georgia. Wait, no, not Georgia. We have North Carolina, Pennsylvania. Okay. North Carolina, Pennsylvania. And then for Kamala Harris, it's Michigan, Arizona, and Georgia. So those are the states. The reason why Pennsylvania and North Carolina are tilt is because Ron DeSantis again will probably make inroads with Republicans and moderate voters in Pennsylvania and in North Carolina. For Michigan, Kamala Harris will be able to turn out the vote in Detroit to the point, in the Wayne County area, to the point where it will counter effects of the rest of the state, the rest of the rural parts of the state. So if Kamala Harris gets the vote in Detroit and Grand Rapids or in that area, as well as Ann Arbor and Flint, those kinds of small cities and big cities, if she's able to combine all of those votes and have an inspire the nation kind of campaign, then she will be able to win Michigan. But she won't be able to do the same thing with Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania. She's not also going to be able to do it. It's not going to be enough to get voters from Charlotte and the Research Triangle region, but it will be very close between Kamala Harris and Ron DeSantis in North Carolina. Meanwhile, Arizona and Georgia, for Arizona, it was a real toss-up for myself to figure out, primarily because it could go either way. I'd see Maricopa County, the Phoenix area, voting for either Kamala Harris or Ron DeSantis. But I generally say, though, that Arizona is becoming more Democratic, and by the time 2028 comes, it's likely that it will be Democratic enough to the point where Kamala Harris can feasibly win the state. For Georgia, Stacey Abrams is also going to play a big part if this kind of combination happens with her Get Out the Vote campaign, which would seriously help with Kamala Harris's campaign, since she only wins by 273 electoral votes. It's very close between Kamala Harris and as well as Ron DeSantis. If Ron DeSantis had 5 more electoral votes, if he won New Hampshire, or even if he won New Hampshire, he would win the election, because well, I should make a video about this, but what happens in a presidential tie is it goes to the House, and the president votes on the House by state delegation, which means that California, which will have 52 which will have 52 congressional districts, will represent one vote Meanwhile, Wyoming, which has one congressional district, will represent one vote as well. And in the House, Republicans have more states, delegations represented than Democrats, and that's just simply how it works. Since all the Democrats are packed in select few states, while Republicans are spread out in a lot of states, which then makes this presidential tie favored for Republicans, and thus Ron DeSantis would win, even with just 269 electoral votes. So that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. This video is now adjourned, and I'll see you in the next one.